All right, so guys, tonight we're going to be going through some pretty wild information. I want to kind of give you a little bit of background on how this workshop came to be, because typically our workshops are topics like cancer and heart disease and diabetes and all that stuff that, you know, that most people kind of feel like, well, you know, I've heard everything there is to hear about cancer. It's on the news every day. You know, what could possibly be new? You know, all this kind of stuff. But here's how this kind of got put together. My sister is she's my oldest sister. She's I think 7 years older than me, 6 years older than me. She's gonna hate me for not knowing that when she watches this video later. Hey sis. But she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer about 6 months ago, and you know that's really young because I'm not that old, and she's not that much older than I am. And so she went into the doctor because she found a little nodule on the side of her neck, and you know she had known it was there for a while. And but then when she went in, you know, she decided she was going to go in because she started losing her voice. Her voice started getting funny, and she, you know, was affecting her singing and everything. And she knew something was going on. So she went to the doctor and got it checked out. And sure enough, they said that it was in fact cancer. And so their solution was the surgeon said, we're going to cut you from behind your ear all the way down to your shoulder. We're going to remove your thyroid and all the lymph glands all along there. She said, well, I understand the thyroid, but, and understand, my sister is a ex-pharmacist. She's not uneducated by any means. In fact, she got way better grades in school than I did. And she, I mean, we're talking top of the class. She was salutatorian, I mean, the whole thing. She knows her stuff. She knows what to look for, and she's also been living, you know, a chiropractic lifestyle for a good number of years now. And so, you know, things weren't really adding up, and you know, she said, well, why are you going to take out all the lymph glands? And they said, well, you know, because there's a good chance that they're cancerous too. She said, well, wait a minute, how do you know if they're cancerous? They said, well, we don't know until we take them out and biopsy. So, you know, the solution is, because we don't know anything about it, you know, just go ahead and remove it, and then you won't have the problem anymore. And, you know, I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's, you know, let's say Dr. Chris here goes, and, you know, he goes to the doctor and says, you know, I got this pain in my finger, you know, because these patients, they keep on laying on my hand all day. You know, they're smashing the heck out of my fingers. What do I do with this? You know what? No problem. You have pain in your finger. We will cut your hand off, and you won't have any pain anymore.
Well, then I can't adjust. In her situation, those lymph nodes, they do things, right?
Yeah.
They're useful. You want them where they are.
So, I mean, it's just completely crazy notion. And so, you know, long story short, that process got me into researching all the thyroid stuff, and so we got together and we talked about this, and we were like, we've got to do a workshop on this. Had no idea it was going to go down this track. Had no idea that it was going to get into the information that we're going to talk about tonight, and just the sheer disgust that I have in learning all the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. So you guys are in for a good one. You guys all should have notes. Go ahead, hold up your packet if you got one. Everybody's got one? Everybody, yes, okay. So there's a couple things that just, before we get going, I want to walk you through it. Can I borrow your packet here for a second? Okay, the first page, this is the updated core fundamentals. This is basically the things that every single person needs to live. Okay, these are the important things for your health. All right, the next thing, this is the aggressive dietary plan. Very simplified, but lays out for you in detail. These are the things, if you have an acute condition, a chronic disease, if you have any kind of serious problem, health challenge going on, these are the things that you want to follow to the T. If you are healthy, you don't have a chronic disease, this core diet, this is where you still want to stay. Okay, so it doesn't mean, you know, I don't have any symptoms, so I don't need to do anything. You know, you still want to stick to that. This next page, actually next 2 pages, these are the updated core testing and daily supplementation guides. These are the things literally every single American needs to be doing to a degree. Okay, some of them require testing in advance to know, but pretty much all of you are going to fit into these categories here. And then this last one, you'll see the prices on here. This is everything in the core fundamental protocols and all the supplements that we'll be talking about tonight. So everything on the list, they're on here just in case, because we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff. If we don't have it in stock, you guys can order everything tonight and you get a 15% discount off of anything ordered. That includes any of the other supplements tonight. So, so that's there in case you want to jot stuff down as we go. All right, so the title of the workshop tonight, we call this Deficient. And the reason why, of course, is because, you know, most people we find are deficient, but there's this definite deafness where people just have no idea what's going on. This isn't an issue where, you know, where it's just a few people here and there that are hitting this. This is the general population. I mean, this is 95% of people. Most likely, every single one of you in this room tonight has one of these deficiencies that we're going to cover. In fact, as we were kind of preparing, you know, walking through, I pulled up a couple people's levels test today. Some of you guys might be sitting here and, you know, just appalling looking at the numbers after actually looking at what normal values are and seeing, you know, just realizing again how badly the numbers were off when we first look at them. So I couldn't find a better quote, verse, anything to fit this better than Revelation 18:23. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy pharmakia were all nations deceived. That word pharmakia that's in the Greek text of the Bible literally means the administering of drugs. It's right there in the scripture, you know, but it's changed to witchcraft. It's actually, it reads in most of your Bibles as witchcraft, not the actual word pharmakia. So, getting into the information, vitamin D discovery. Go for it.
So before we get started on vitamin D, the big three things we're going to be talking about are vitamin D, omega fatty acids, and iodine. Okay, we're going to start off with vitamin D, just talk about what general people know about it. Okay, so it was discovered in, well, it was first described by Dr. Daniel Whistler in 1645. He described rickets, which is the softening of bone. That's why the little bow-legged guy, he's got rickets. Some of you know what that is, some of you don't. It can also affect older people. It's called osteomalacia in that case. In the 30s, the chemical structure was discovered at the University of Göttingen in Germany. Now it's known to be a steroid hormone. In 1936, they actually discovered vitamin D3, which is the one that we're going to talk a whole lot about. The scientific name for that is cholecalciferol. In 1971, Nixon signed the National Cancer Act. Now, this is a big deal because this now changed from medicine being funded by hospitals, private enterprise, to now being funded by the government. Okay, so this changed the whole medical model. Okay, 1971, the Journal of the National Cancer Institute publishes sunlight exposure and risk of developing cutaneous and oral squamous cell carcinomas in white cells, which begins a cascade of research linking sun exposure to cancer. Well, we now know that that's not exactly the case. We're going to talk more about that.
Ironically, in the study, it is actually white cats. So I want to point this out here too. As we're going through this information, you might notice some of these words are bolded. You guys see that? Okay. Just in case, you know, any of you guys are conspiracy theorists out there, you know, whatever the case, pay attention to the connections here, okay? Because there's a lot of really big connections here that you see repeating over and over and over again. And I put those in there specifically so that it would target you to say, you know, well, what's the connection there? What's the connection there? What's the connection there? And you'll keep on seeing it over and over again. So the war on cancer, the bottom line is this. You gotta see this. The war on cancer, 42 years later, after Nixon signed that war on cancer, you know, that changed everything, that literally committed billions of your dollars to give to cancer research and cancer treatment. Guys, this is taxpayer dollars. This is coming out of your paychecks. 42 years later, what's the result?
Worse.
Do we have more or less cancer?
More.
We have more. Does cancer treatment cost more or less?
More.
More. Are people getting sicker or healthier? Sicker. So are we any closer to understanding what's going on a national level? Not even close. Not even close. In fact, we're going in the complete opposite direction. We're not even going in the right direction. So 42 years later, here's Time Magazine. This is 1973. Immunologist Robert Good, toward control of cancer. And what do they say? Literally every election cycle, it's, we're going to go after cancer, and we're going to find better health care, and blah, 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 all this stuff. Why we're losing the war on cancer and how to win it. Then Time Magazine, why medical bills are killing us. And I mean, this is not the quintessential, capstone of all of it, the Angelina effect.
What?
What? I mean, you've got one of the most powerful media personalities that goes, you guys have seen this, right? She got a double mastectomy. Did she have breast cancer?
No.
No. Why did she get a double mastectomy? Because some doctor took a sample and said that she had a gene that predisposed her to breast cancer. She did it voluntarily. She cut off her breast voluntarily. Time Magazine. This makes Time Magazine. Are you kidding me? I mean, what in the world is going on here? You guys see that? I mean, this is just craziness. This is not even sanity. This is absolute craziness. And people look at it and go, oh, she's a champion. She's a warrior. She's a role model. No, she's confused and she's been lied to. That's it. That's the bottom line. Either she's been lied to or she's got a part in it. One of the two. I don't know. But this is just craziness. The war, we aren't losing. They've already lost. They've already lost. But realistically, now you got to question, well, have they? I don't know. I mean, it depends. What are you fighting? Think about that as we're moving forward.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the profits being made. The current budget of the American Cancer Society is $380 million, while its cash reserve approaches $1 billion, making it the wealthiest nonprofit organization in the world. Okay, so you have this organization that's supposed to fight cancer. Over the last 40 years, where have we got? Nowhere, right? Look at all that money they have. Do they really want to cure it? Or would they rather just keep all that money and keep all these guys on these fat salaries and everything like that? You gotta start thinking about this. All right, so avoid direct exposure to the sun between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Slap on sunscreen, reapply every 2 hours, even on hazy overcast days. That's what the cancer org page says. You can look that up on the internet. How much sense does that make? Okay, you need sunlight. Everything alive needs sunlight, right? What is sunscreen? It's a bunch of toxic crap that you put all over your body so it gets absorbed. It's a negative feedback loop. It's dangerous, okay? 9 of the 15 chemical sunscreens are considered endocrine disruptors. Those are chemicals that interfere with the normal function of hormones. The hormones most commonly disturbed are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and thyroid hormones like thyroxine, okay? So you can see it's doing a lot of damage that not a lot of people give it credit for. Most people think, I need sunscreen, I'm in the screen, it only makes sense. That's because they've marketed that into your head for 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And seriously, is the research, do you think it's because the research just isn't there? That they just don't know that sunscreen is toxic? Do you think it's that they just don't know that your body needs sunlight to convert vitamin D?
They don't care.
I mean, the research is there. All you have to do, any of you can get on the PubMed database. That's the national database of research in the United States. You can get on there and you can look up vitamin D3. You can look up these chemicals in sunscreen. You can look up anything that's ever been published in any medical journal in the last 50 years. You can look up all this stuff. It's all on there. And so you can see they have access to the same research that you do. And yet this is right on their website. I mean, you can go, you can look. This is right, it literally says the word slop. We didn't make that up. It says slop on the sunscreen. Interesting to note too, I mean, you look at their property holdings and everything, it's unbelievable. The property, I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars in property, and land and buildings. And only a small fraction of their money actually goes towards cancer research, which is really pharmaceutical research. It's not cancer research, it's pharmaceutical research. Okay? But their salaries far exceed what they spend on research. Think about that the next time you sign up for a Relay for Life and all these other fundraisers. So here's how it works. This is available to anybody, including the Cancer Institute. They have all this information, I promise you. I didn't make this stuff up. 7-dehydrocholesterol. Yeah, that's right. Cholesterol is required for vitamin D production in the body. How many people in here know somebody taking cholesterol medications? Raise your hand if you know 2 people. Oh, come on. How many people in here know somebody taking cholesterol medications? I want everybody to see the hands. Everybody, right? You know there are millions of people taking cholesterol medications every single day. It's required. Now, what do you do to convert it? You go into the sunlight. UVB sunlight converts vitamin D in the body. So now you have pre-vitamin D3 in the skin cells. Now you have body heat, and that converts it, which body heat, that happens all the time. You don't have to do anything for that. So we don't have to worry about that part. You're not going to stop people from, body heat, right? So you add body heat, now you've got vitamin D3, the same as the supplement form. That's what you put into your body when you take the supplements, right? Okay? Now that goes into the bloodstream to the liver, where it's then converted into 25-hydroxy vitamin D. That is what is tested when we do blood spot tests for vitamin D, right? Then that goes into the bloodstream to the kidneys, where it's converted into 125-dihydroxy vitamin D, which then circulates to binding receptors in the nucleus of cells, influencing gene expression in over 300 identified genes so far. Might I remind you that 3,000, what did I say?
300.
300? Okay, 3,000, that's a lot more. We like that number better, right? So 3,000 identified genes right now. And let me remind you, it's a hormone. It's not a vitamin. How important are hormones? You can't function without them. These are essential hormones. So, really understand how this works here. And understand when you're taking cholesterol medications, you're already dropping the ball. If you're not getting sunlight, there's another hit. They're telling you don't get in the sun. If you're not taking vitamin D3, you have no other way to convert it. You have no other way to produce these hormones in the body to where your body can utilize them for all these functions.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about what vitamin D actually does. Everybody knows it maintains healthy bones. How does that happen? You're going to find out that vitamin D and calcium are like brothers. They go together, they work together in so many different ways I can't even begin on it right now. It also regulates the immune system. It maintains brain function throughout life, maintains healthy body weight, protects against low levels of radiation like sun, reduces incidence and severity of colds, multiple sclerosis, asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, tuberculosis, heart attack, and cancer. Now, we have this chart right here. Go ahead and explain this chart.
Okay, so basically what you have here, this is from an internet site called Grassroots Health, which is an information database and study research site for vitamin D. And what you're looking at here is the rickets prevention rate. So when you're severely deficient in vitamin D, this is basically where you start to see rickets, which is a complete deficiency, right? Anybody's going to identify it. Your bones are falling apart when you're a kid. This stuff is easy to see. So then you've got this is just looking at all the collected data where they test people for vitamin D production in all kinds of different random diseases. So they basically test, thousands of people with cancer, thousands of people with diabetes, and then they chart it here, and this is where the average test zones are for all those people. Well, ironically enough, when you get over about 50, it really cuts off dramatically. But any expert that understands vitamin D now says that anywhere between 50 and 70 is where the target range should be. Anything below that, you can expect to see a lot bigger concentration. When you understand how vitamin D works within the body, according to all this, and you see how it activates the genes, you understand why this is important. You see that? So you don't want to fall below this level because that's where all the cancers, that's where everything else lands. Does that make sense? Okay. So research, there's been over 200 epidemiological studies and over 2,500 laboratory studies that have linked vitamin D deficiency to cancer. Again, is this not on the PubMed database? Yes, it is. It's all there. Okay, there's plenty of research. Yet the National Cancer Institute does not recommend vitamin D as a cancer treatment. Why? Why? I mean, it costs what, a couple cents a day?
That's why.
If you actually, I mean,
That's why.
think about it. If you gave every single American the required amount of vitamin D per day, do you know it would cost a fraction, probably less than a half of a percent of what we're spending on Medicare costs right now. Yet, I mean, when you see the oh geez, in 2010, the Institute of Medicine Special Committee set 600 IUs per day as the RDA, the recommended daily allowance. Where did they get that number? Probably, yeah. I'm gonna just throw something out there. What I think is, and we'll piece this together as we're going into some of the other stuff too, is that it's just enough to where you don't see rickets. Right? Just enough to where you don't see that anymore. Because when you see kids legs bowing out, oh, you get angry, right? I mean, if you saw, if one of your children had their legs deformed out and you knew that somebody knew this stuff, you would be mad. But what if it's more devious? What if you can't? What if you can't test for it that easily? What if you don't have such a severe deficiency where it's causing these kind of issues, but it's just enough to where you're still sick, but you don't know it because it's now chronic, right? So most experts, on the other hand, agree that 4,000 to 8,000 IUs is actually necessary, while even the Institute of Medicine themselves conclude that taking 10,000 IU per day poses no risk at all. No risk. They know it doesn't pose any risk, but they still don't recommend it. So the risk of calcification, what about this? This is one of those things that you hear, you might be watching something on the news. I've seen it mentioned a couple times. I see people talking about it online, that there's this risk of calcification, that you might actually have some atherosclerosis caused by vitamin D consumption. Okay? Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's actually comes from a combined vitamin K2 deficiency. It's not actually the vitamin D3. It's because you're also deficient in vitamin K. Because you're not eating enough green leafy vegetables. Because vitamin K doesn't go in Cheez-Its. Right? So if you don't have adequate amounts of vitamin K, then you can't use the vitamin D to actually keep the calcium in your bones where it belongs. It starts leaching out. It starts, and it can accumulate if you have multiple deficiencies stacking on top of each other. So supplementing with vitamin D3 has the potential to reduce cancer deaths in America by 75%. Wow. This was in the Annals of Epidemiology, 2009. We know the information is there.
Okay, so the testing for vitamin D, the gold standard is done by what's called immunoassay. That's where they put it into these tubes and there's a specific antigen that binds to the actual vitamin D. It's extremely expensive. It's not really reasonable for the general population to be able to be tested this way. So ZRT Labs calibrates test results of their low-cost blood spot test to be equivalent to that type of technology, making it possibly the best option today according to Dr. Mercola and others. So that's what we use to do the testing. It's not the really, really expensive stuff that you need a whole laboratory just to do in your office, but it's the next best thing as far as keeping things accurate.
If you look at Dr. Mericola's website, who in here is familiar with Dr. Mericola? It's the largest natural healthcare website on the internet. You know, so they're not just, you know, some what I've coined Facebook physicians. You know, the people who, you know, get on and they're an expert in everything, telling you what to do and everything, and you can tell it's just totally ridiculous. So this guy is credible. You know, they've got a team of people that are credible. I have actual colleagues that write for Dr. Mericola. So very credible website. They don't just put out any fluff that's out there. And this is a lab that they actually recommend using is ERT Labs. Of all the tests that are available, they recommend using this one. And it's only a $60 test. So it's really easy to understand. It's really easy to test your levels and see exactly where they are. And luckily it's cheap too. And 50 to 70, of course, is the optimal range. Anything below 50 is deficient. And I'm telling you, in the entire time that I've been testing for this, I don't think I've seen one person over that 50. Anybody in here? No? Yeah, I don't think I've seen one person that's actually over that number, with the exception of people that have actually been taking the vitamin D that we told them to take, and then they retest. We have had a couple of those. Okay, so here's the dosage then. After you get the test, okay, after you get the test and you know what your level is, the mortality rates, it's important to look at the difference between D3 and D2. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of doctors still today, I'm talking medical doctors, they still prescribe vitamin D2. They don't give people vitamin D3. I don't know why, but they tell people, you know, the prescription forms, they're vitamin D2. Go figure, okay? Mortality rates indicate a 6% decrease while taking vitamin D3. But if you take vitamin D2, it actually increases by 2%. Your mortality rate increases by 2% in the research. So do you want to take a pharmaceutical grade vitamin D2 supplement to increase your vitamin D levels? No. You take the cheap, non-regulated nutrition, you know, vitamin D3. That's what you take. The stuff outside the system, in other words. Get 20 minutes daily exposed sunlight between the hours of, oh my gosh, wait a minute, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. That's disastrous. That's when the sun will fry your skin like pork rinds, right? No, that's exactly when you should be getting it, and it's 40% at least exposed during the day. That means, men, go out in the backyard, take your shirts off, run around the backyard, you know, whatever. But you've got to get adequate amount of sunlight every day. Do not supplement if diagnosed with sarcoidosis, tuberculosis, or lymphoma. Anybody in this room with those things? Yeah, I didn't think so. So, great. Then, if you're deficient, 1 to 2 Designs for Health, vitamin D, Ultra 10K, which we would actually do based on your results, whatever those are, plus 2 to 3 Designs for Health Neuromag daily. The Neuromag is the newest form of magnesium. It's called magnesium threonate, and it's very easily absorbed in the body. Again, you can look, Dr. Mericola wrote about this recently, very good form of magnesium, and it's gonna keep your magnesium levels up so that you actually are able to take the vitamin D plus the calcium that you should be getting sufficiently in your diet, and now you've got the magnesium to couple it together and shuttle this stuff into your bones. So how do you fix osteoporosis? Right there. And get off your butt. That helps too, right? So you got to exercise as well. Adult maintenance, 1 Designs for Health Vitamin D Supreme plus 1 Designs for Health Neuromag daily. That's pretty much across the board for everybody. It doesn't matter where you're at, you take those 2 things. You know, don't take those 2 things if you haven't been tested yet. You know, see what your levels are first in case you got a bigger deficiency. But after that, that's just the maintenance. Child maintenance, 2 drops of the Designs for Health Emulsi D3, which is 2,000 IUs per drop. That's based on a 50-pound child. So if you have a kid that's not quite 50 pounds, let's say they're 25 pounds, you would do 1 drop a day. If you got a kid that's 75 pounds, you could go up to 3 drops a day, or just, you know, I would probably do 2 to 3 drops instead of going up to the vitamin D Supreme. Most likely your kids eat better than you do. You know, a lot of times we really make sure that our kids are eating vegetables and stuff like that, so they're getting the greens that we don't want to eat. right? Infant maintenance, 1 drop, Designs for Health, Emulsi D3 every 2 to 3 days. You mean infants need to take this stuff too? Yeah, because you're deficient as well. If you're breastfeeding, they're not getting it from you. So and they're definitely not getting it from formula. They're definitely not. In fact, they're getting antagonizing agents. So if an adult taking blood thinners, use the Emulsi D3. Don't use the vitamin D Supreme, because the vitamin K does have an effect of blood thinning. But let me say this: is the vitamin K the problem?
No.
No, it's the stinking blood thinners that you're on. It's not the vitamin K. It's just, see, when you're taking these drugs that have negative effects, you got to be careful because you're holding a gun. Make sense? Yeah. All right, 15% off anything that's covered tonight. Just a reiteration there.
Okay, so now we're going to switch and talk about omega-3 fatty acids. In the 1930s, these were known to be essential to normal growth and health. In the 70s, studies of the Greenland Inuit tribe linked high consumption of fish fat to virtually zero cardiovascular disease. Well, how can that be? Doesn't fat clog arteries? Not all fat's the same. That's what we're talking about here. The current RDA suggests 1.6 grams per day for men and 1.1 grams for women. While the China study is used in many popular documentaries to support vegan/vegetarian diets, has anybody heard of this study? It's a big deal. It basically says don't ever eat meat again in your life, which isn't the way it needs to be. What the China study doesn't usually tell you is that those people did in fact eat meat. They just ate it on a scale about 1/10 of what a normal American eats. And the meat that they were eating wasn't fed a bunch of artificial feed. It was actually grass-fed how it should. So you can eat meat, you just want to make sure that it's the right kind of meat. Okay?
Yeah, I don't think Monsanto corn grows in the Himalayas, right? Actually, that stuff probably grows anywhere. So hostile takeover, this, of course, in 1970 now, so we jump forward from 1970, where we're looking at the Inuit tribe. 1970, Monsanto creates glyphosate, patents it for sale as Roundup. How many of you guys have this stuff in your garage? Okay? Think about this. 1970s, Earl Butz, Nixon's Secretary of Agriculture, changes subsidies from preventing overproduction by storing seed to rewarding overproduction and paying subsidies based on farm size and production history. Goes from paying people subsidies to make sure that we maintain good order in the system and that there's good variety and everything, to basically squashing small farmers and only rewarding those that grow the easiest stuff to grow in mass quantities. Well, that's what they say, right? But of course now studies show that it's just as easy to grow the other corn than it is the Monsanto corn, and cheaper, because you don't have to use all the sprays and everything. But that's all hearsay, right? Government intervention has produced a model where small farms fail, Monsanto rules the world, and our entire food supply is saturated with government-subsidized corn, soy, cottonseed, other GMO crops, and feedlots fed zero grass, only these grains. Sounds like a plot of a movie, doesn't it? But that's reality. It's absolute reality that we live in right now. It's everywhere. 2013, that's this year. Various studies link glyphosate to cancer and gut dysbiosis, intestinal dysbiosis. Keep those words in the back of your mind.
All right, does everybody know what Monsanto is? I know a lot of you, this is the first time here. Does everybody got a hold on what that company is all about? Yes, no?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
Okay, Dr. Mark.
Monsanto is a company based out of St. Louis, my hometown. Yeah, and they basically started off as a biotech company. Okay, they are the producers of Roundup. That was their first real big one. Then they are also the ones that are genetically modifying crops. They're the ones that are putting fish genes into tomatoes. Most likely that, the last time you ate tomatoes, you actually ate fish tomatoes. They're the ones that are producing corn that produces pesticide itself. It's called BT corn. and it produces its own pesticides, which means you eat it and you're eating pesticides, right? I mean, you don't even have to spray it, it's producing it itself. How dangerous is that? Just think about that. And so they're genetically modifying all these crops, and what you find is even in places where they ban the use of it, it's still popping up. You know that recently in Oregon, they tried to get approved genetically modified wheat. Wheat. I mean, it's in everything, right? Not that corn isn't. They tried to get it approved and it got shut down. And just here a little while back, it popped up on a farm in Oregon. They noticed something crazy was going on. They tested it. Sure enough, it was genetically modified wheat growing in this field. So, I mean, this stuff is crazy what's happening. Crazy.
People behind Agent Orange or something back.
Oh yeah, Agent Orange. That was theirs. That was theirs. Yeah, just spend a little time looking at Monsanto and what they're responsible for. In fact, if you get on the on our Vimeo page or YouTube page, there's actually a video of me speaking downtown at the rally against Monsanto that's called the March Against Monsanto, and I go through a list of all the things that they've been behind. It's pretty freaky.
So when you think about Monsanto, they started off as a chemical company. They still are a chemical company. They just so happen to be in the food industry now, and you're eating that food potentially. So besides the deep entrenching in the government, crop production, and even the organic and natural food industries as seen below, most people are not aware that Monsanto is deeply entrenched in big pharma. Pfizer and Bayer own Monsanto's pharmaceutical division, Pharmacia. Okay, now what does that mean? They're all working together. Okay, they sell each other companies. You think they don't talk about how we can make more profits? Yes, they do.
And what you see down here, just to explain these, you can pull up these images online if you want to see them a little bit closer and read through the list. But these are the people. Okay, these are the names here. This is their position in Monsanto. This is their later position in the federal government. Okay, yeah, one right down here. That's Hillary Clinton. Oh, interesting. So this is the seed industry, 1996 to 2008. Okay. These are all the companies, all the seed companies that Monsanto has already bought. These are the ones that they already own. Okay? They own about 1/3 of the seed companies in the world. They're rapidly buying up every seed company that they possibly can. Why would they do that? Control. Yeah. You know, they're in a position now. Corn actually comes out of Mexico, right? So corn has been protected in Mexico for thousands of years. It's been growing there, you know, very controlled. They have all these different hybrid kinds and, you know, and all this, very protected. They have banned Monsanto corn from coming into Mexico. Guess what they're finding in Mexico now? GMO corn. And once it crossbreeds, what can you do about it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We have frankenfood globally now, and there's nothing we can do about it. Absolutely nothing we can do about it. It's unstoppable at this point. This here, what about the organic food industry? You're safe as long as you shop at Whole Foods and buy organic, right? No. Wrong. This is all the natural and organic food companies in the brown, and these are their conglomerate companies that own them. So you've got Nestle and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Kellogg and Cargill and Hanes Celestial Foods. All of these different big companies, they own the little guys that you think you're buying that's actually good for you. So the bottom line is, unless you know where it's coming from, unless you can trust the source, you're not safe from this stuff. So that's just a little bit of background.
And I just want to go back to this one. I mean, this one's the most disgusting to me because you take a look, these people were working for this company and now they get to make the rules. Well, do you think that they're going to make the rules to benefit the guys they used to work with? I mean, of course they are. It's a never-ending just spiral.
Clarence Thomas is on there. You guys heard that name? Right. I mean, there's a lot of big names on here. Big names on here. And they consistently write policy that protects that company. You guys have no idea how big they are. No idea. Omega-3, the future of food. grass-fed beef from healthy cattle has an omega 6:3 ratio of around 2:1. Is that ideal? That's ideal. While grain-fed cattle are closer to 20:1. 20 omega 6 to 1 omega 3. Radically out of proportion. So this goes back, this fits the China study, doesn't it? If you're eating natural foods that are eating grasses, you're getting the right omega content. But when you start eating frankenfood, it's not correct anymore. Farm-raised fish, that's big now. You know, everybody's starting to eat more fish because fish is good for you. You know, you ever get the salmon at the restaurant because you're like, you know what, I'm going to do good today. I'm going to eat the salmon. No, that's one of the worst things that you can order on the menu. It's actually farm-raised salmon. So they're fed soy and corn. Now tell me, how in the world does a fish eat soy or corn in nature? Does corn grow underwater? Monsanto corn does. But this reduces their omega-3 content by as much as 80%. 80%. I mean, that's just disastrous when you start to understand how this stuff functions in your body. Inadequate consumption of wild-caught, non-contaminated fish, naturally raised meats, and the overconsumption of grains has been a contributing factor in catastrophic health consequences, including rising cancer, heart disease mortality rates, neurological degenerative disease like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which is now going to be the most expensive healthcare deficit in this country's history. It's coming in these next 10, 20 years. That's why they're revamping healthcare, so that they can stop the costs going out to all these people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia. And obesity now affecting more than 1/3 of Americans are sick. Guys, are we designed to have 1/3 of us sick? Not even close. Not even close. We're built better than that. Come on. So, you know, this is where our fish is coming from. That ain't right. Fish don't swim sideways. Right?
Okay, so this is what every cell in your body looks like. This is the cell membrane of every cell in a living being. Okay, it's made up of basically cholesterol, fatty acids. Okay, so the 6:3 ratios that you're supposed to have less than 10. Okay, now you can't even feel it until you get to a ratio of 20:1, that is 6:3. Most people are at about 10:1. They're just wrapped in toxic fat because everybody's got fat, but they don't feel it yet. It's when you get to 20:1 that's when you start developing some of these chronic diseases that we've been talking about all night. Now, the average American is actually at 25:1. Why is that? What we eat. All what we eat. Doesn't matter what size you are. This can affect the skinny guy just as much as it can affect the fat guy. It's what you're eating.
25:1. I checked two people today, and they were 28 and 40 when we pulled up their test. So this is called the theory of everything. Literally, this stuff is so big. It comes from Michael Pollan. He's a UC Berkeley professor. He's a health author, and he's really working hard to change this stuff. This is not a dumb guy. This is a very smart man. And he calls this a theory of everything because of this simple chemical cascade and what this means for the health future of America. See, pharmaceutical giants make billions of dollars every year on COX and LOX inhibitors. You guys ever heard the word COX-2 inhibitor? Right? You know, that's a huge name for this whole sector of painkiller medications. And what you have here is you've got corn and soy that are feeding, basically they're converted in the body into arachidonic acid, which is an omega-6 fatty acid. Okay? Then from there, you've got COX and LOX that come in, and they actually move the arachidonic acid and create prostaglandins. Okay, prostaglandins are pro-inflammatories in the body. So you think about this from a pharmaceutical standpoint, it's genius, right? People eat all this corn and soy that you're feeding them, but then we can go back and we can now sell you a COX-2 inhibitor so that you don't feel the pain that the food that we feed you is actually going to create. Wow, that's messed up, isn't it? Like, can you believe? I mean, it's genius from a monetary globalist standpoint. But this stuff is absolutely disastrous for anybody sitting in this room who eats corn and soy. But here's the wild thing. We see at the same time that we're all landing deficiencies in omega fatty acids, right? Because of the way that it's been changed in the food. So see, when you create a problem, you also have to remove the solution. So you make sure that all the food is deficient in omega-3 fatty acids and do everything you can to squash the idea that omega fatty acids are actually valuable. When I read a couple of articles today that said, basically they were trying to say that, the omega-3 fat is over. That people are realizing that it's not as effective as everybody said it was. That's not what PubMed says. Where's this information coming from, right? So, but what we find, this is wild, is where they have to make a separate category of COX inhibitors. They have to make a separate category of LOX inhibitors. There's one chemical found in the research that blocks both pathways. That is EPA. EPA, where does that come from? Fish oils. It's the primary component of fish oils. Blocks both pathways, which means that when you do have arachidonic acid buildup in your body because of your diet that you should change, it doesn't matter. That EPA will block both of those pathways and start getting you out of the inflammatory, the pro-inflammatory spot, which is then going to lead to all the chronic disease. Prostaglandin E2 creates inflammation that's behind all pain syndromes, all degenerative syndromes, all chronic disease, which is billions more in drug sales. On top of the COX, all the painkillers, they're making far more billions in what this right here is causing. Do you see why this is called the theory of everything? and this is the whole boat here. This is all the money right here in this one simple thing. So what do you do to fix it? You get your omega-3 balance right, and you stop eating that junk. You fix your diet, which is sitting in your laps.
Okay, so the testing for omega-3, people who have a diagnosed chronic or inflammatory disease, suffer chronic pain, or any neurological conditions are likely deficient. I mean, you already know that from the symptoms that they're having. Proper omega-6 to 3 ratios support normal cellular function while inhibiting pain and inflammatory processes. That's what we were just talking about. The Holman blood spot fatty acid test is a simple way to assess your current omega-6 to 3 ratios. That's the one that we're going to be using.
So dosage, omega-3 dosage. Number one, follow the Liberation updated dietary guidelines, right? Because everything that's in those guidelines, especially if you're in any of these categories, start with the advanced part, then go to the core plan later. But you're gonna notice that everything that makes sense according to what we've covered so far, as far as cutting out the grains, cutting out the corn, cutting out the soy, all these things. Best oils should contain ALA, EPA, DHA, and GLA. ALA is from flax oil, EPA and DHA are from fish oil, and GLA is from borage oil, okay? Plus omega-3 antioxidants to stabilize the ingested oils so that they don't go rancid while your body is utilizing them and processing them. It keeps them stabilized. So when you're taking a high dosage, you always want to take enough antioxidants with that to make sure it's protected. So if you're deficient, the protocol will be optimized based on your test result. That's all I can say about that. I'm not going to put any numbers out there. You got to get your test, and then once your test comes out, that's going to tell, because you may need more DHA, you may need more EPA, you may need some other combination of them, but that's going to be specifically tailored to what yours says, as well as the quantity of each of those oils. Adult maintenance, if you guys know your levels are good, you don't have any chronic disease, any chronic illness, no problems whatsoever, unlikely, but if you're in that category, 1 teaspoon of the NutriWest Complete High Potency Omega-3 Liquid and 3 NutriWest Complete Omega-3 cofactors to keep it sound while your body's utilizing. A child is 8 of the NutriWest Complete Children's EPA DHA and 2 NutriWest Complete cofactors chewables. So they have a chewable form, they have capsules that the kids can use, okay?
Okay, now we're going to switch gears and start talking about iodine. So in 1811, iodine was discovered by Bernard Courtois during Napoleon's War in 1860, Dr. John Francois Condé announced that iodine was the cure for goiters. This is ironically considered by some to be the birth of the modern medicine, i.e. disease cure model. Now the reason that we say that this is ironic is because it's got nothing to do with medicine, right? Iodine's not medicine, but that's where this all comes from. In the early 1900s, pharmaceuticals raged in business, gaining the upper hand on the nutritional and homeopathic industries. Great evidence of that right now. Turn on your TV, what are all the commercials? You need him on the commercials? Guys like us? No, we're not. It's all drugs. It's all drugs. 1908, the U.S. government mandates chlorination of all public water supplies. 1924, the U.S. government mandates the iodizing of salt, squashing the massive and well-established iodine supplement industry. Science now proves the iodine in salt is just barely enough to reduce visible goiters, yet not enough to fulfill deficiencies. So just like the vitamin D recommendations, they're just at that level to where you can't physically see a problem, but you're not nearly where you need to be. Okay? 1930s, mercury, known to damage thyroid and endocrine function in the form of the thimerosal, starts its use as a preservative in vaccinations.
So yeah, and on that note, you notice that it's just barely enough to keep the visible signs away, right? The visible signs of these massive goiters, protruding from your neck, right? Just enough, because if you don't see it, it's not a problem, right? That's the way we're trained in medicine. If you don't see it, then it's not a problem. It's only the symptoms that matter. So as long as people feel safe by taking their iodized salt, and they don't see that there's a problem, then everybody's good. All the problems are solved. 1951, the U.S. Public Health Service makes water fluoridation official policy. Fluoridation is known to cause calcification of the pineal gland, which is smack dab right in the middle of your brain, which is responsible for production of melatonin, which is responsible for sleep, sexual maturation, and free radical protection. What is free radical protection? Keeps you from developing cancer. Early 1950s, the USRDA for iodine was dropped to 0.15 milligrams after flawed research begins to demonize iodine. The Japanese consume, just so you get the idea here, approximately 12 milligrams per day right now today. They always have 12 milligrams per day. And our RDA is 0.15 milligrams. Just enough to keep you from getting a goiter, but no more than that. The 1970s, iodine is replaced in favor of bromination as a dough conditioner. Bromine is not found in the body anywhere. It's not necessary in the body. There's no function for bromine in the body. It's a chemical, it's an industrial chemical that is unsafe for human consumption. This practice was banned first in the UK in 1990. They banned it 23 years ago, but it's still in use in the United States today. Do they have more research than we do? I don't think so. They have a queen and a new baby, but still dominant in the U.S. today. I mean, this is crazy. 1970s, some of the most iodine-rich foods are milk products until the subsidies began. Because, see, iodine was actually found in cow's milk, yogurt. Those were the two, and cheeses. The dairy products were the most prominent iodine sources until they started eating corn and subsidized soy and all these grains that aren't a normal part of their diet. All of the iodine went out of the milk products. So this is really interesting. This is from the early 1950s at the sign of the unholy three. You can find this actually on Wikipedia. And it has fluoridated water, polio monkey serums, which we know now are actually linked with all kinds of crazy stuff like cancer. It's actually found that the polio serums actually have caused cancer.
SV40 virus?
And the simian 40 virus, and it's reported that as many as, I don't remember what the number was, but it was millions of people, of you guys right now, millions, will potentially get cancer because of exposure to getting this virus from the polio vaccine. If you guys got the polio vaccine when you were a kid, This was on their website, on the CDC's website. And then when it started buzzing around the internet, they pulled it down. But you can still find it. Yeah, he saved it. I've got it up on my Facebook page if anybody wants to see it. Mental hygiene, uninformed public over here. You know, and so it's really interesting. It's going through telling you how these are the signs of the unholy fruit. These are the things that are literally, they were talking about it was actually communism taking over. That this is how they were going to, you know, push a communist agenda in the 1950s. Okay? This one here, bread iodine content and thyroid radioiodine uptake, a tale of two cities. Summary, the iodine content of bread consumed in the Bronx was found to be significantly lower than the bread consumed in Columbia, Missouri, which, you know, they had iodine in it, right? So the bottom line here, a population with high iodine intake requires higher doses of radioactive iodine in the diagnosis and treatment of thyroid disease. Questions are raised regarding the relationship of high iodine intake to the risk of developing thyrotoxicosis. This was 1972 in the British Medical Journal, a major study that was actually part of why they started changing the iodine out in favor of bromine. Why? What was the basis? Because it makes it harder to give you radioactive iodine. You don't respond to it. Why? Because the iodine actually protects you from the radioactive crap that they give you. And they start removing it from our food source.
Okay, so now let's talk about the functions of iodine. It's used to make thyroid hormones after direction of the hypothalamus, which is incredibly sensitive to toxins. The main body surveillance mechanism for abnormal cells in the body. This is a big deal. That's basically what cancer is. When the cells become abnormal and start to pile up, they call it cancer. That's all it is. It triggers apoptosis, which means the programmed death of cells, which is what you want when the cell is going wrong. You want it to die, okay, in normal and abnormal cells. It detoxifies chemicals, including mercury, chlorine, fluoride, bromine, as well as biological toxins such as food poisoning, snake venoms, and other things. It's also a powerful antiseptic to bacteria, algae, fungi, viruses, and protozoa. It's an anti-allergen, and it functions in protection of double bonds in lipids for delivery of cardiovascular system and synaptic membranes in brain and retina. Retina's in the eye, of course. So it has a lot of different functions. And is any of that stuff going to work right if you don't have enough of it in you? Of course not.
The interesting thing to note here, as you're looking at these, mercury, chlorine, fluoride, bromine, these are the halogens, right? You know, so they have basically an antagonist relationship where if you have enough iodine, your body will not absorb chlorine, fluorine, bromine. It won't. Mercury, it will actually reject these chemicals. Your body will not assimilate them. On the other hand, if you're toxic with those things, then your body has a hard time assimilating iodine, which means you stack this stuff up more and more and more in your system. So it's an antagonistic relationship here because they're all basically vying for the same receptors in the body. And of course, this one here, protection of double bonds in the lipids. That's your whole high cholesterol, high density lipoproteins, low density lipoproteins. This is the whole cholesterol thing that's going on. Iodine protects the double bonds, which actually gives you the high density lipoproteins instead of the low lipoproteins, which is what's causing all, you know, they say is causing all the heart attacks and strokes, which it really isn't. That's a whole nother story, but you see how all this stuff plays in. It's everywhere. It's the whole picture put together. So this is the result. Over 27 million Americans have been diagnosed with the thyroid condition. The speculation is that over half are undiagnosed right now. You have a problem, you don't know it because you haven't experienced enough what yet? Symptoms. Exactly. Somebody said pain, somebody said symptoms, you know, somebody might have said cancer there, right? Shocking. Half of all women and a quarter of all men die with evidence of an inflamed thyroid. They open them up and their thyroid is actually size bigger than what it should be. Your thyroid, you should not be able to feel your thyroid. But most people can feel their thyroid because it's inflamed. Everybody's like, Studies show 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women develop cancer in the U.S. Forbes magazine reports U.S. healthcare hits $3 trillion. Have we lost the war? Apparently not. Looks like it's well funded.
A lot of money.
Look at this. Healthcare spending per capita versus average life expectancy amongst the upper nations. This is the average life expectancy. This is the total expenditures of health. Look at the separation here. This is the USA. Look at the separation there. Yet, are we at the top of the chart? Not even close. We have the worst healthcare system in the world. That's what that translates to. In all the research, the worst healthcare system in the world. We need an overhaul badly. And when you really look at music kicked in, is that my cue? That's all right. We're done. Time's up. Sorry guys.
Time's
up. You know what that means basically is this in short. The next civil rights movement is not about blacks and whites. It's not about Mexicans and anybody else. It's not about color. It's not about gays and straights. It's not about any of that stuff. The next revolution is for our lives. All of us. That's got to be the next civil rights movement. We have got to push this. Nobody else is going to do it.
All right, now we're going to talk about the connection to Big Pharma. So, chlorine. The ICIS reports that chlorine is essential in the manufacture of 93% of the top-selling drugs. Bromine, used in analgesics, sedatives, antihistamines, pneumonia drugs, Alzheimer's drugs, cancer drugs, and AIDS drugs. Fluoride, used in anesthetics, antacids, anti-anxiety drugs, antibiotics, antidepressants, antifungals, anti-everything. Cholesterol drugs, anti-malarial drugs, chemotherapies, appetite suppressants, arthritis drugs, psychotropic drugs, steroids, and anti-inflammatories. Mercury, used in amalgam dental fillings, vaccinations, ear ointments, hemorrhoid ointments, contact lens solutions, and nasal sprays. So as you can see, this stuff is everywhere. It is everywhere.
The crazy part about this, okay, just to kind of put this all together here, is again, I want you to see this concept when you understand how the halogens work in the body. You know, when you have sufficient iodine, do you get disease? No, not nearly as much. Your body is actually protected against these things from being introduced, right? Your body will resist chlorine. It will resist mercury. It will resist bromine. It'll resist all these things. But if you drop the iodine levels, now you actually will freely move these things into the body, which happens to be the delivery method that they use to get these drugs into your system. So what happens, what you see there is, we have to make you iodine deficient or our drugs won't work. But at the same time, if you don't need the drugs in the first place, it doesn't matter. So we have to make you iodine deficient. I mean, guys, iodine is required by every function in your entire body. If you go back in time, back 100 years, doctors' stances was basically when you have no idea what else to do, give them iodine. It was like oxygen to doctors. It was a core fundamental of healthcare practice. Systematically forgotten. Systematically removed. So iodine testing, how do you go about this?
You can do a couple different things. One that we've done with some of you already, I know, is the 2-inch by 2-inch patch, or else is the brush-on kind. Basically, the way that it works is if the iodine is absorbed, if you do the brush-on, the color would be gone. The patch works a little bit different, but either way, if it's under 8 hours, there's probable and likely deficiency. The second way you can test for it is you get up in the morning and you take your temperature. You take your temperature again at 3 to 6 p.m. If there's a greater than 1 degree difference, then iodine deficiency is likely. So that's pretty simple for anybody to do. There's also lab tests. Various thyroid and iodine tests can be ordered if more intensive diagnosis is required. However, they are costly and usually are caused by the same problem. So it's pretty easy to get tested for this stuff, is what this means.
Yeah, the waking temperature, you want to make sure that you do this before you get out of bed. Basically, as soon as you wake up, you put that thermometer in your mouth. Because your core temperature naturally does drop down a degree or less. But if there's a wider than 1 degree variance, then there's a difference. And you can see, some of you might have said, take your temperature. Some of you I might have said, put it on your armpit. When you get down to it, the whole thing, it really doesn't matter all that much which way you take your temperature. You're just looking for that wide variability. Does that make sense? Because if the temperature is going to drop in your mouth, it's going to drop in your armpit too. I mean, if you want to check somewhere else, you can do that too. Just make sure your kids don't use that thermometer. All right, iodine dosing and previously diagnosed. And what I mean by that is if you have a previous diagnosis of inadequate thyroid, Hashimoto's, Graves, any of these other issues that are related to the thyroid, you want to make sure that you pay really close attention here. If previously diagnosed, intestinal dysbiosis must be addressed first before attempting iodine supplementation. Why would we have to check that first? Where did we see that before? You guys remember? Monsanto corn has been tied into research to cause intestinal dysbiosis. So your intestines are so messed up because of our diets that if you don't do this, you're going to have massive symptoms as you start dumping all that bromine into your system. It's bromine detoxification. That's where the symptoms come from. And your body can't handle what they call the thyroid storm in the research. It's all the antibody responses that's driven from your gut because your gut's so messed up because your intestinal dysbiosis was created by the very thing that created this problem that you're dealing with now. It's all tied.
So if you've never been officially diagnosed with that, how would you know if you have it?
Well, first of all, do the tests. But if you really think that there's a bigger diagnosis, like your thyroid might be really messed up, then you can actually do a thyroid panel where we can look at T3, T4, look at all the hormones and see how they line up. If you suspect that there's a bigger issue. But like I said, the tests are expensive, so you could either do that or you could follow through the intestinal protocol first, get your gut fixed so that even if you are, you'll still be able to process the iodine without causing all kinds of antibody response. So if known Graves or Hashimoto's, you need to take then the systemic formulas, mors, and rocks must be used for at least 30 days to increase your selenomethionine levels to reduce oxidative damage and resulting immune antibodies before iodine can be started safely. If you don't, you're going to have all kinds of an immune response and it's not going to be fun. You're going to have issues, so make sure that you take that in advance, 30 days, then starting at half per day, introduce systemic formulas, TMI. This is actually the thyroid supplement that's got the iodine in it, in ironically 12 milligrams per day, exactly what the Japanese take. So is it too much? No. In fact, you'll actually work your way up to 4 per day, which is about, 50 per day, which in the research is totally safe. You can take up to 50, you can even take 100 per day, and it still is not going to cause a problem in most people. In fact, some doctors work people up to 100, but I'm fine going up to 50 to reduce any chances of any kind of toxicity issue, overabundance of iodine. Work your way in there a little bit slower because you got something else working for you. It's called better brain and nerve system function, right? So it can do more with less. So if you then, and like I said, start with half per day and then introduce it slowly. Slowly, that means every week you add one more or one more half. So you do it very slowly to make sure you don't have issues. If you're deficient, you work up to 4 systemic formulas, TMI daily, adult maintenance, 1 TMI daily, child maintenance, 1 TMI twice a week. Okay? Yep.
What if you've had your thyroid removed?
If you've had your thyroid removed, that's a whole different scenario we're sitting down and talking about. Yeah. I mean, that's somebody else in here could say, well, what if you have your intestine removed? It's like, that's a whole other category of stuff. If your head's been removed, we got real problems, right? So, So that's one definitely let's sit down and talk about more in detail. Additional support. Now, like I said, when you increase iodine, the symptoms actually don't come from the iodine. It comes from the iodine dumping all of that bromine in your system. The bromine that's coming from brominated flour. And the new car smell in your car, that's bromine. And all the other sources that you get it from, it starts dumping that chemical that is not supposed to be in your body, that your body sent out and stored in fat because it can't get rid of it. You know, so it packs it away into fat. So as you put in the iodine, you start losing weight, but that's because you're dumping the toxins. So you have all kinds of crazy response possible. That's the bromine coming out. It's not caused by the iodine. So an aid, you can use 1 to 2 teaspoons of sea salt daily, unless, of course, you have high blood pressure or you're taking blood pressure drugs. Then you want to definitely monitor your blood pressure, make sure that you watch it very closely and only use enough that it's not going to cause any problems. But you also take an Epsom salt bath daily until the symptoms reside. So the salt internally and taking a bath in it actually helps bind up the bromine and pull it out of your system, delaying all the effects. Systemic formula is IDS. This is the intracellular detox system. It's used for supplementary detoxification, so it helps speed the clearance of the bromines, heavy metals, and other toxins, because it actually takes those toxins built up in your hypothalamus. Remember talking about that, how that drives the thyroid? The hypothalamus binds toxins all up in it. And so this raises your glutathione levels to help your hypothalamus clear out so that it can start telling your thyroid what to do. So we're moving up the chain, okay? And it improves thyroid function secondarily, and it raises, like I said, glutathione, which is the most potent antioxidant in the human body. This is what's tanked in autism. This is what's tanked in cancer patients, in AIDS patients. Any of these really killer diseases, you see glutathione levels are floored. They're completely bottomed out. Fascinating fact, this is amazing. Who in here remembers a couple weeks ago we were playing the video about all the different cancer cures and you saw Dr. Hoxie, Harold Hoxie? You guys remember seeing that one? Okay. Harold Hoxie's famous cancer elixir was in fact largely iodine. That was his formula. He said himself his formula would not work without iodine in it. That was the primary ingredient. He added the herbs to it because they were also medicinal herbs that are known now today to actually be anti-cancer agents as well. Though the amount is not known for sure, it is suggested that he used as much as 600 milligrams of iodine in his formula that he was giving to people every day. And he was so successful that he had cancer treatment centers in 17 states with over a 90% effective rate. Over 90% effective rate. It was so successful that it was shut down by the FDA and forced to flee to Tijuana, Mexico, where they still provide care in great effect today. You guys see a few connections here? So, that kind of sums it up. Again, I couldn't find a better verse, quote, whatever, to sum it up better than this. Isaiah 35:5. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Guys, it's information. It's lack of information that people perish. You got to know what's going on. You got to see what's going on. You got to make sure that you who know have an incredible burden, just as much as just as much as me, just as much as Dr. Chris, just as much as my staff. It's nobody else's job any more than it is yours to make sure that people know. So get them the help that they need. Do something to make a difference for them. Going back through, if you guys, we went through a lot of stuff tonight. There's probably a lot of things going through your head right now on what do I need and we could probably spend the next hour going through what you need. Here's what I would do first. Kind of plug in, if you know you're in a certain category, start with the basic fundamental nutrition plan. The basic fundamental. If you know that you need the thyroid, you haven't been, you need the TMI, and you can start with the basic protocol. You don't have any Graves, any Hashimoto's, anything like that. You could start with that basic fundamental, the maintenance protocol. That would be fine. If you have one of those more advanced ones, I can pop back through the slides with you, and you can write down what you need to do. Okay? Any questions before we wrap it up?
if you're taking a thyroid medication, do you recommend you take the TMI along with it, or?
It would depend on why you're taking the thyroid medication. If you had your thyroid removed, you don't have a choice because they removed the organ, right? You know, so if you still have the organ though, would you rather have a dysfunctional organ that's not working adequately that you need to supplement with drug to make it work, or would you rather make your thyroid work again? There you go. So if you still have your organ and you want to make it work better again, now, do you want to just start jamming stuff into a dysfunctional organ that has been, you know, riding a tricycle for the last 10 years, or do you think it's best to go up the chain and make sure that everything is functional here, then make sure everything is functional here, then go down to here and make sure that it's working?
You know, eliminate that over there.
Bingo.
Same type of question, if you're taking a thyroid medicine and you did the iodine panel, would that change the way your medicine was working?
We've done one simple thing that we've done in the past, well before I ever knew this stuff, just putting people on a good detox program. You can act like the IDS, because it works so well up here, it actually makes the thyroid work better. And we've actually seen people cut their thyroid medications in half or more, just because they're getting their brain cleared out and it's now able to actually tell their thyroid what to do.
How do you get to test for iodine 2x2 patch?
We can, she can do that
Yeah,
tonight.
she can do that right now as you leave.
Is that okay? Yeah? Yeah.
Paint it on.
Wake up, we're having a painting party in the back. Okay, any other questions?
Was the iodine, go ahead.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Was the iodine, if you take an iodine, would it interfere with any blood pressure medicine you take or any other medicine you take? Would it make a difference?
If you're taking, I mean, it can, because your thyroid is such a powerful organ. I mean, it is incredibly important. It's very delicately balanced. What I would do if you're taking any kind of medication, start slowly with it. Make sure that you don't have any issues. But what you'll probably see is that your need to have those other medications as a crutch, they're going to start disappearing. I mean, we're talking core fundamentals of cellular function here. This is the big picture on a micro level.
You mentioned conspiracy a while ago. All the facts seem to tie people together to the foundations that started all this depletion and deficiencies in vitamins. And the age of cancer, we know that's grown tremendously since all this started. For-profit medicine is all part of it as well. Are you saying that this was an agenda?
I'm saying it's tough to deny. It's. I mean, does anybody else kind of feel like, well, with all that information that we just gave, it's kind of hard to believe that it just all happened by chance?
Yeah.
It's pretty darn hard to believe it happened by chance.
Yeah. It's not all counts.
Yeah. Darn smart people that put it all together.
They just kind of support each other. They all kind of make payments on their limousines and that.
Yeah.
That's how it works. The rich stay rich.
Any other
The poor
questions?
guy trying to get there.
Nope. Okay. Well, guys, glad you came. Have a wonderful night. If you have any individual questions, come and see us. Ask.